Have you ever really thought about what makes us connect with things? Why we feel this pull towards certain ideas or people or practices, while others just leave us completely cold? Well, today we're going to dive into a really profound but also beautifully simple principle that gets right to the heart of what it takes to learn, to grow, and to actually change.
It's something we've all felt, right? You hear a piece of advice and boom, it just clicks. It lands perfectly. But then you hear another one, maybe just as wise, and it just goes in one ear and out the other. This click isn't random. There's actually a fundamental principle at work here that decides whether a seed of wisdom can even start to grow in the first place.
So, the source of that click is what we can call the affinity principle. In the original texts, this is known as yuan, and you can really think of it as the essential foundation, the groundwork that has to be laid before any kind of progress, whether it's spiritual or in your everyday life, can even begin. Now, yuan is so much more than just a passing interest. It's a deep, resonant connection. It's kind of like the fertile soil that's absolutely necessary before you can even think about planting the seed of belief. Without that spark, without that rich soil, well, nothing that comes after is going to happen. This slide right here lays out a sequence that is just so crucial. It's a chain of events, and affinity is the non-negotiable first step. It has to come first. It's that connection that allows real belief to bubble up. And that belief, that's the fuel you need to actually practice something. And it's only through that consistent practice that you can get real, tangible results. You just can't skip ahead to step 2. It doesn't work that way. So this all leads to a really practical question, doesn't it? If affinity is the master key that unlocks everything else, how do we get it? How can we actively build this connection, especially if we're just not feeling it at the beginning?
Well, the main method is a practice that we can translate as making offerings. But hang on, we're not talking about a simple transaction here. It's all about consciously creating a relationship that's built on respect and joy. In our modern lives, an offering could be as simple as giving a friend your undivided attention, or sharing your knowledge freely without expecting anything back, or even just taking a second to appreciate something beautiful and wishing that same joy for other people. It's really any act that helps cultivate a generous, joyful heart.
This practice is so fundamental that even these highly realized beings, bodhisattvas, make it their very first task every single day. And why? Because it generates a joyful heart. And that joy, it builds interest, it builds this positive forward momentum. When you actively show that you value a connection, whether it's to a person or an idea, that connection just naturally gets stronger and it starts pulling you forward. This slide just nails a mental block that I think so many of us have. We think, look, I'm already short on time, on energy, on money. Why on earth should I give anything away? But this totally flips that perspective. The real purpose isn't to deplete yourself, not at all. It's to invest in building that joyful affinity that makes you open and receptive to wisdom in the first place. I love this analogy because it just makes the whole concept so clear. That joyful feeling the quote talks about, that's the engine of connection. It creates this natural motivation that makes you want to engage. You want to learn more. You want to get closer. It can make something that feels like a lot of effort feel almost effortless. Okay, so let's explore the flip side for a minute. What happens when that engine of connection is just missing? What are the consequences of having no affinity, no yawn at all? See, when that initial spark just isn't there, the mind doesn't stay neutral. It's not a passive thing. It actively starts working against any potential for growth. A very specific set of internal walls starts to go up. Without that connection, we naturally feel resistance. We start to see practices not as something helpful, but as these obstacles that are getting in the way of our normal pleasures. Our food, our drink, our entertainment. Doubt starts to creep in. And even when wisdom is explained perfectly, it just doesn't land. The receptivity just isn't there. And this lack of affinity naturally gives birth to a state called the arrogant mind. Now, it's really important to understand this isn't about being boastful or loud. It's a much more subtle state of self-satisfaction, where we just feel like, I'm doing fine on my own. I don't really need any guidance. This is that quiet little voice of the arrogant mind. It's such a simple thought. Hey, I've got things covered. I have what I need. But that sense of complacency is a huge, huge barrier because it slams the door shut on receiving anything new. I mean, if you feel like you're already full, you're not going to accept anything else, are you? This image is such a powerful metaphor, isn't it? The arrogant mind holds its cup up high, all proud and self-sufficient, so any wisdom that's offered just spills right onto the ground. It can't be received because the cup of our mind isn't being held with humility and openness. But what about the other side? What happens when we actually succeed at cultivating that affinity, when the connection is strong and really vibrant? Well, the result is this profound state of inner peace and stability. So, just like we've been saying, a strong affinity naturally generates a joyful heart. And this isn't some fleeting emotion. It's a stable, positive way of being on the path. This deep joy is the foundation that allows both your mind and your body to finally truly feel at ease. And this right here, this is the ultimate aim. The goal isn't to just mechanically go through the motions of a practice. It's to reach a state where you dwell peacefully, where the practice feels like coming home. And that stability, that contentment, it only comes from having a genuine, joyful connection to it. I mean, the contrast on this slide is pretty stark, isn't it? On one side, you have a mind that's joyful, receptive, and stable. On the other side, a mind that's resistant, agitated, and constantly getting pulled back into old habits. And affinity, that is the fundamental factor that decides which state we end up in. So, when you look at the whole picture, this entire journey really starts with this single conscious choice, the choice to build affinity. From that one simple, joyful connection, real interest can start to grow. That interest is what fuels our practice, and it's through that practice that we can finally find a stable, peaceful home inside ourselves. So, this leaves us with a final thought to take with us. This principle, it applies to everything. Our work, our relationships, our own personal growth. So where in your life could you benefit from consciously choosing to build a more joyful connection first, before you expect belief or action to just magically appear? What are the deep connections you're choosing to build? We will see you next time.